This is True Multifamily, the show where we dive in on what really happens after closing a multifamily property. We're going to expose the role of asset manager. That's the person who has the responsibility of seeing the vision, executing the plan, and managing people, budgets, and timelines, all to deliver returns for our investors. These are the real struggles, the real victories, and the real stories of asset management.
Welcome back to another episode of True Multifamily. I'm your host, Justin Fraser. Here today, Mr. Scott Meyers. Scott, thanks so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Justin. I'm glad we finally had a chance to catch up.
Absolutely. Today, Scott's got such great experience from multifamily, but also self-storage. So I'm really excited to sort of compare and contrast the differences in asset management between the two. But Scott, please start us off. Tell us a bit about how you got into real estate, how you got started, and take us through sort of your journey.
Sure. So sort of like most people get started in real estate with a single family house. I bought, now this is going back a little bit for some of the listeners out there, I bought the Carlton Sheets home study system back in 1993. And I used that to buy my first single family house. I found an actual VA loan that I could assume because those were out there at the time. So small down payment, bought that property, rehabbed it, rented it out, refinanced it. So the Burr method before it was the Burr method.
Yeah.
And then took that money and parlayed that into two more properties. And so we continued to do that for a number of years, 175 to 250 positive cash flow on those, which kind of got eaten up pretty quick when you have vacancies. And so I thought, well, I need to grow. And if I'm going to achieve, what Carlton and everybody else says, that I need to get economies of scale. So I started buying apartment complexes. So we had about 78 houses and about over 400 multifamily units as well. And to me, it felt like I compounded the problem. Still had a lot of tenant and toilet trash problems. And even though we had management companies and managers in place, Justin, the buck stops here still. I still have to deal with issues and write checks and things. And so, everybody says real estate's great. Rental real estate's great if it weren't for the tenants and toilets, right? So
exactly.
So I began to look, what does that look like, and it's parking lots and self-storage. And so I got more intrigued then with self-storage and just taking, the knowledge that I had in underwriting and managing and operating, multi-tenants in apartments and seeing what that looked like in self-storage. It's just not tenants, it's just units and it's their junk. I mean, their treasures that are stored in those units, and looking at the business model. And, the more I looked at it, I really liked what I saw. If they don't pay, you get to put a lock on their unit and they can't get their stuff out until they pay you. And if they still don't pay, then you get to sell their stuff off and recoup your money. So, that alone, was worth the price of admission, or at least worthy of taking another look. And so the more I looked, I liked that, not only that, but just the market as a whole, the self-storage market in the industry, very, very recession resistant, very, very inflation resistant. A turn in my apartments was about $1,300 in about a month and a half to get the folks out. Clean, paint, replace, whatever needed to be done. And in storage, in 30 seconds, after somebody leaves, you can take a blower and blow the unit out and move in the next person that's waiting in line. And so, all these things just kind of kept pointing to, a simpler business model that is a little bit more predictable and a little bit more manageable. So bought our first facility with a partner, and then began selling off single-family houses and our apartments, and then just went 100% into self-storage. And so now we have we acquire facilities, existing facilities. Everything we do is value add, which I think everybody that's investing in real estate should be doing nothing but value add. And so existing facilities that are undermanaged, have more land and another acre or 2 acres that we can add on to and build more buildings, add more units, and then also developing. We buy a piece of dirt and we develop facilities and repurpose industrial buildings as well, and commercial buildings. And now, strip centers, retail's dying. Many of the big boxes are going away, and we're repurposing those and converting them into self-storage as well. So we covered the gamut, and then back in 2007, we started an education company as well. So we consult, we hold live events, we partner with folks, and so we have a suite of resources and software and any item basically that helps somebody to learn how to find, acquire, and manage a self-storage facility. So that's I don't know, in 5 minutes, I think that's a story over the past 20 years.
That was great. I'd like to break down a few key pieces there. Your transition from single to multifamily, how did that go? You said you learned Carlton Sheets for the single family stuff. What did you have? Mentors, guides? How did you feel comfortable getting into the multifamily space?
Yeah. So, I was active in my local RIA and purchasing home study systems, and I was soaking everything up. Should have had a mentor at the time. The first, I had 15, I think we had somewhere between 15 to 20 houses when we bought our first apartment complex, and that was 60 units. And so it was kind of a jump, at least for us at the time. And so my mentor was the broker who brokered the deal to me, and maybe not the best person to go to reach to is somebody who also has, vested interest in getting the deal across the finish line, because I had a commission check waiting for him. And so I should have dug in and done a little bit more due diligence. At the end of the day, I should have had a mentor. I should have had a coach, somebody helping me through that. Did that the wrong way and learned. I mean, it was still profitable, but you don't realize on the back end, some of the mistakes that were made, and just first time underwriting, and it all penciled out, and the bankers were okay with it. The appraiser was okay with it. So certainly, who am I to question?
Sure.
These numbers
Everyone's going to give this to me. They all approve. Why not? Right.
Exactly. And unfortunately now, as we become, mentors and teachers and coaches to others, we realize that, I should have dug into the appraisal and realized I was paying more per square foot than everybody else. Sure, it still pencils out and covers the loan, but, it just didn't put us in the best position. We were paying retail, full retail. And you never want to do that. You want to walk in with a buffer and be able to purchase a little bit less per square foot, or in terms of cap rate, whatever, than the rest of the market is buying stuff, because we are better, and Justin, your audience, and is better than that. We shouldn't have to. So should have had a little more help on the first one.
Okay, got it. And then how long would you say you were in multifamily before you started thinking about self-storage?
Yeah, so we slugged it out in multifamily for I think about 3 or 4 years or so, and then realized that even though it was going well, it just we had some loftier goals. I don't think they were loftier than anybody else's, but we wanted to have the lifestyle business in real estate.
Sure.
And it was still at that point, until you reach that critical mass, and it's different for everybody depending upon their business structure, but we just didn't ever really reach the economies of scale where we did have third-party management everywhere, and a staff large enough to handle then the management companies and all that. That was still my wife and I. And so we realized, and we just didn't really like how susceptible we were to the laws. And thank God there wasn't moratoriums on evictions like we have right now. But it didn't matter back then. And, every time we turn around, the city didn't prepare for the sewer that needed to be completely rebuilt in the entire city, and so they increased sewer taxes and doubled our taxes, and just sent us into into the red instead of into the black. There's always those unknowns, and we thought that there was just too much liability in renting out units with people living in it, and all that goes with it. And so that's when we began looking into another asset class. I mean, we love rental real estate for all the reasons everybody does. I mean, we can leverage to buy real estate. You can't do that with any other investment. You put renters in it, whether it's in a storage unit or apartments or a house, and they pay off your basis. I mean, there's no other business that works like rental real estate. We just wanted to eliminate some of the hassles and make it a little more simpler and more predictable
Absolutely.
business model.
Yeah. Okay. So then about what year is it that you get into self-storage?
Yeah, so 2005 is when I
Okay.
bought my first self-storage facility. Yep, that was a partnership with someone else. We had 398 units, so a little bit bigger than I probably still could have done even at that time on my own in storage, with the banks taking a chance on us being the first time in that asset class. So that was a very successful project. We found two business partners that were getting a business divorce, and both of them didn't want the other to make a dime off of it, so they continued to drive the value of the facility into the ground and sell it too cheap.
All right.
We were the benefactors of that, and then
Sure.
shortly after that, then I went on and began to do more projects then on my own outside of that partnership, and sold everything else off at that point, the houses and the apartments, just slowly, and it wasn't a fire sale or anything along those lines. It's just
Sure.
that we realized that this is the business model, and so now we are sitting at we've acquired, developed, converted over roughly 2.4 million square feet and about 14,000 doors nationwide.
Wow. Okay. So what makes a good self-storage opportunity? How can you tell that this might be something for you?
Yeah. So lots of items that tick the boxes for us, and again, it has to be value add. And so when we look at a site, first of all, we look at the market. If we're going to raise the value in this thing, it really, we're really going to look at how this thing is positioned compared to the rest of the market. First of all, is it in an undersupplied market? And in our market, Justin, for a storage facility is really about 5 miles. That's all the further that anybody's going to drive to get to their stuff. And in most areas, it's 3 miles. So we look at a 3-mile radius, and the amount of the population, and then the amount of competitors and their square footage. There's a number right around 6.5 to 7 square feet per person or per capita that is considered equilibrium. If
Okay.
you've got 10 square feet of self-storage in a 3 mile radius, it's leaning towards oversupplied. If you're at 4 square feet, then it's, green light. Let's go buy this thing because, we can raise rates and build more units. And so that's what we're looking for, is a good, strong market. And
Does the
then,
type
in
of
the mom and
area,
pop. Mhm.
I'm sorry to
Go
interrupt you,
ahead.
but just does the type
No,
of
go ahead.
area matter, whether it's more rural or more urban, congested, tightly,
Mhm.
how packed those people are? Because I imagine that ratio might change depending on how much space
It
people have in
does.
their own homes.
It does, in their own homes or just out, whatever, an outbuilding or anything else. And the more
Right.
rural that we get, there's a less propensity for people to store. And then also there's just less activity. I mean,
Right.
we're in the trauma and transition business. And so when there's trauma, when somebody's basement floods, they put their stuff in storage. If
Okay.
there's any other, I mean, that's kind of outside of the norm. But, people lose their jobs, divorce, death, bankruptcy, that usually involves a transition and kind of some trauma that goes along with it, where people need storage. But just plain transition, people moving, or if they're getting ready to stage their house to sell, they put stuff in storage. And when they move, they need storage again, or just extra stuff. So there's lots of things that cause a demand or a need for storage. But the more people that we have in a more concentrated area, as you mentioned, and where a lot of those are apartments where they don't have a lot of storage, that bodes well for us. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into that creates not only a need for it in terms of total square footage, but then also generates more demand. College
Got
towns,
it.
military towns, they're more transient. So yeah, a number of factors. Florida doesn't have basements, so those areas are usually higher demand as well.
Got it. Got it. That makes so much sense. I'm there. I'm your customer. I just sold my house here in New Jersey and
Mm-hmm.
got a storage unit for the first time ever. And even though I've got a basement, loaded it up so the house was nice and clean for
Yep.
staging, and
Well,
makes
I,
total
I
sense.
thank you on behalf of the industry.
I'll do what I can to help you out. So how do you what are the differences in how you think about your customers,
Mhm.
tenants, multifamily? I want my tenants mostly to stay as long as possible,
Sure.
set roots so that they'll take that rental increase every single year. But I'm also
Hmm.
locking them into a 12-month lease usually.
Hmm.
So how do you think about differently from tenants and multifamily to tenants and self-storage?
Yeah, it's not the opposite, but in some instances it is. And so,
Okay.
first of all, how does the thing show? From the website, from the mobile phone, because what we found, Justin, is that primarily the person in a traditional household that has whatever, mom and dad, husband and wife, and kids, it's usually mom that gets stuck with renting the unit. It's just in her list of things to do. And she's usually the one driving to get her husband's stuff out of the house or the garage. So she goes to the website, and it's got to look, the facility needs to look good from, clean, secure. So to the point that you can portray that and show the security and everything else. But then also you got to make it easy for her to rent this unit. This isn't like a house or an apartment. They're not going to come out as a couple and drive around and look at the school system and the neighbors or anything else. Is this thing close? Is it clean? Is it secure? And can I rent this thing from my mobile phone right now? Or at the very least, reserve a unit, 10 by 10, 10 by 15, and they got a special, done. So if you could make it very accessible and easy for somebody to rent, that is, first and foremost in terms of the client. And then there shouldn't be any surprises when they get there. And so we're very hands off. We do have facilities that have managers and an office that is set up, and we have ancillary income streams like truck rental and business services and different things of that nature that we can use to drive revenue. But at the end of the day, the highest line item in terms of our expenses always in any business is payroll. So to the extent that we can utilize technology and they can perform that transaction, which it's pretty low labor intensive. It's like, a Redbox rental, essentially. It's not much more complicated than that. So they can do it from their phone or a kiosk when they get to the facility. And after we've taken their picture, got their fingerprint on the unit, and we have their payment, we give them their key code or a key fob, and they can get in. There's no other reason. I mean, it's a metal box. The rest of the liability is on them. It's their stuff. So to the extent that we can make all of that available to them and very easily and accessible, and everything, again, is clean and secure, that's how we win the game. And that we're found. I mean, marketing, the game is won by being found online, period.
Got it. Got it. Makes sense. Um,
Hmm.
how can a storage unit differentiate itself? Because from personal experience, right? I went online, I saw
Hmm.
this one on this street was X dollars
Yeah.
for my 10 by 15. The one on the other street
Hmm.
was exactly the same, maybe within $5 difference, all within my town. They were all the same. And I ended up picking the one that was, like you said, closest to me, right? So
Yeah.
how can
Yeah.
you make your storage unit stand out from the others?
I mean, let's face it, Justin. I mean, that is, a blessing and a curse. We're a commodity at the end of the day, so people aren't looking for school systems and neighbors and anything else. It's got to be close. If we offer a special, that may help us to beat our neighbors and all of us, meaning our friendly competitors in that 5-mile radius, 3-mile radius. Everybody's looking to see what everybody else's rates are, because we know, and they're specials, because that, is really one of the few ways that we can differentiate ourselves. Outside of that, ease of use, make it easy. As I mentioned, the website's got to look nice and crisp and clean. Even if, this is very similar, Justin, to the apartment days when the apartment complexes that we would buy, they had pools. Most of them did. And people would come in and they'd say, well, I never rent a apartment or live somewhere that didn't have a pool. And, we had 400 units, 200 units, it didn't really matter. We'd open up the pool on Memorial Day here in the Midwest, and, 10 people show up to have the free hot dogs and their kids poop in the pool, and then we don't see them again until Labor Day, when we, have the pool closing, and they come back for another free hot dog at the party, and their kids poop in the pool and they leave, and we never see them in between then.
Right.
But nobody would ever dare rent at a place that didn't have a pool. So we offer all those amenities as well. If it makes sense, truck rental, and UPS services, eBay services. Anything that we can do to load it up so it looks like there's a self-storage party when they come to the website. Even if they never need any of those things, they want their stuff to be at a facility that has all the bells and whistles, again, even if they don't need it. So that is one way we can differentiate ourselves, and we certainly hope to make money off those ancillary income streams and services. But even if we don't, it looks like this is the place to be. But really, there's not much other than being clean and accessible, and people don't not everybody, not every generation wants to rent a unit from their mobile phone or from a kiosk. They do want to talk to somebody or see somebody, and so if they're calling, you rest assured they're going to get a phone call, or they're going to receive somebody on the other end, or a phone call back right away, because this is, again, a commodity, and they'll go on to the next person if they don't talk to a live person to help them along. So we want to capture. We spend all this time and money on marketing and everything else, and so if somebody's coming to our site or calling, we have to capture them, and they kind of, you got to pry them out of our cold dead hands before they go anywhere else.
That makes sense. So do you have, multifamily, we use property management companies, right? I have site staff, employees. Do you self-manage? Do you have management companies? What does that even look like?
Yeah. Self-management makes me want to crawl in a corner and vomit. No, thank you. It's, now I know we're heading towards that at some point. We're large enough now that most likely we're going to bring some of that component in-house, but we're syndicators as well. We raise private equity, and so we're big on third party and kind of, arm's length away. We don't want to take all the fees and be running everything and receiving all the profits from a facility. So nor do we want to, again, I don't want to start a property management company, and I don't want to have to know intricately every detail about every market or hire the people to do that just yet. So we hired third-party property management companies. We've got roughly 3 to 4 that we know do very well, and it really depends upon proximity, where that property is. And we want it to be in a market where they already have a presence. Even if they're managing for another facility, as long as it's 5, 6, 7 miles away, we don't fear that they're going to be, there's going to be a competition or any wrongdoing of sending somebody somewhere else. But we want the benefits of, they got a website presence there, and so they're already paying for traffic. People are going to come to their website, and we're just feeding that. They've got a regional supervisor that can go see multiple facilities, but they're working for that owner over there. They're working for us over here. That's how we really get that economies of scale. And so that's primarily the reason why we want to use them. But again, that arm's length for our investors. And again, we just don't want to start that just yet.
It's very similar to multifamily. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, identical.
One thing that is different though, in most multifamilies, you don't have the sort of franchises that are out there, right? So I can go drive down the main road here, and I see probably the same 3 companies, and I drive 5 miles more, and it's the same companies again. Do you franchise with them? What would be the benefits of that? How does that work with the model?
So, as I begin to look into the business, I just assume those are all company-owned stores, and they're not. So the Extra Spaces, Public Storage, Life Storage, CubeSmart, they own their own properties, but they also third party manage for other
Okay.
owners and
Got it.
developers. So, we would just, explore and look at again, look at them in that same way. What makes the most sense for this asset and where is the closest one, and, just, chat with them about that, make sure that there's no competition, and then determine who's doing the best job in that market.
So if Life Storage, for example, is going to be your manager, then that would be branded as a life storage facility. Is that correct?
Typically, yeah.
Okay.
And it really makes sense too. The only time it becomes an issue is if they're not performing and then we want to take it back, but then we lose all that traffic. We've lost all
Right.
that, the SEO and the Google Mojo, coming to the site. We have to start over again, either with another management company or our own. So that is, kind of a double-edged sword, but far more benefit. Pick the one right to begin with, enter into a long-term agreement with them, make sure that there's performance-based compensation. A component of it is performance-based, so that they are driven to perform just like you are as an owner, and then take advantage of what they've got, which is this website, the SEO that they already have, and that back end all built into place.
Yeah. I love it. This is so great. So the few more pieces. I want to talk about value add. Don't let me forget that. But before we get there, what is it that you are tracking? What metrics are you tracking to show how well your properties are doing? I mean, I got to imagine occupancy, just like multifamily, has got to be a huge one, right?
Yeah, we're very, very similar to, again, multifamily, and for one quarter we may be driving occupancy. It doesn't always mean that we're driving revenue, because even though it does as a byproduct, but then the next quarter when our occupancy gets up, then we're driving revenue, which means rental increases, going back in and hitting those people that didn't purchase renter's insurance up front, offering other ancillary income streams and services to them, and just doing everything in our power to raise revenue at that point, or raise NOI, reducing expenses and raising revenue. And then we go back to the next quarter, and then we're raising occupancy again. And now the next quarter when we go back, we may be again having a rent increase. And the beauty of storage is that we don't, as you mentioned earlier, in multifamily, we try to lock people in for long term, 12 months or longer, and then we do our best to make sure that we get the renewal on that as well. Well, in storage, our rentals are 30 days. It's a 30-day lease. It's a month-to-month lease. So people are either going to move or they're not, and we find that in multifamily too. If they can't pay, or if they're leaving, they lost their job, whatever that means, what difference does it make, a 12-month lease? You go after them and sue them, garnish their checks, maybe that, or garnish their wages, maybe that works. But at the end of the day, if somebody's going to move, they're going to move. So the pros to that is that we can then raise rents whenever we want. Now, we don't do it every other month or every 3 or 4 months, but we do it in month 7 or 8. After we move into a facility and we say, hey, good news, we're the new managers. Here's where to send everything. Dude, come and say hi to the new manager behind the desk, and hopefully you'll see the improvements that we make. And then we make those improvements, and then the next month, 60 days later, good news, hope you liked everything that we saw. And the good news is, we did an audit of all the rent rolls, and yours isn't too far behind everybody else, but we are going to raise your rates by $5, $3, $4. Just those nuisance rate increases. And
I'm not going to go unload all my stuff for $5 more a month. I'm not going to go pay for a truck or the hours and time.
Exactly.
I'm kind of stuck, right, as a customer.
Yep. So $5 across 400 units,
sure,
at a 6 cap.
That's a beautiful thing.
And we do that 7, 8, 9 months or so, and again, we don't get too aggressive with that, but then with those rent increase letters, just like we did with our apartments, to say we're going to raise it. If it's an issue, come see the manager and we'll talk to you about it. But as you can see, here's all the other competitors, and we show them you're still less than Joe Blow across the street or down the road for a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom or whatever that looks like. And we do the same for them as well. And and if some of them leave, they were leaving anyways. And
Right.
and so be it. Then now we have the new street rate in place, and we move in the next person that's waiting in line.
Man, it makes so much sense. Anything besides occupancy that you look at that
KPI,
might surprise
sorry.
me?
So accounts receivable, we're pushing to get all of our rent collected. We only want to have 5% at the most, 5% of our rent outstanding beyond 30 days. That's kind of a benchmark in the industry. Ours are a little bit lower than that. But we want to be driving up rentals. The economic occupancy versus physical, we want that gap to be 0. We don't want anybody on these concessions or free or half price. So, we want that delta to be just as absolutely low as possible. We collect all of our admin fees. We want to sell more locks, boxes, moving supplies. And so our average add-on per unit in terms of renter's insurance and all those ancillary, we give a spiff commissions, bonuses to our managers. So we're monitoring that to make sure that we increase those. And then, turnover. We certainly don't, we can't control that at all costs, but we want to just make sure that we reduce that as much as possible. So, we want to make sure that we address any issues because, our opportunity cost is a vacant unit. So keep them in, whatever it takes to keep somebody in there. It's not, it's not a lost cost outside of that. So those are the main ones. And then, again, we syndicate, we raise a lot of private equity, and so we're always matching up our performance, mostly by NOI and occupancy of where we are today versus the projections that we had in our private placements. And so when we put those reports and project those reports out to our investors, we want to make sure that as closely as possible that we're tracking along with the original projections in the PPM. Yeah. So those are the main, and overall as a company, we're really looking at performance per employee. So how many dollars do they generate? And so that's really more on an entity level, but that also does trickle down to the facility level as well.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you guys been affected by COVID, if at all? Tell me about that.
In a very positive manner. Again, we are in the trauma and transition business, and so what we saw through COVID is that outside of the lockdown, when nobody did anything, well then immediately as a result of that lockdown, kids went home from school, their stuff came into storage. Everybody went home from work, and unfortunately, the businesses that went under, they put the rest of their inventory, office equipment, what have you, in storage until they could either sell it or open up business again. So we got another huge rush and a surge in occupancy. And then when people started working from home, no longer in the offices, well, all of a sudden, dad had to, or the primary wage earner had to clear out a living room, dining room, bedroom to make an office. And if there was two wage earners at home, they had to clear out more stuff and put it somewhere. So that all came to storage as well. So we have, and we're an essential business, and so there's really only one state, for New York, for a little while that was closed for storage, but then the rest of them, we've been running unmanned facilities. The ability to do all this, as I discussed earlier, with kiosks and by the phone. So we've been unmanned before it was cool to be unmanned, and touchless this and that, and rentals in our industry. So we were poised and ready for this. Wow. So it's essential. We were prepared for it, and then the other facilities or mom and pops that in their offices they had to put up a shield and then maybe a kiosk so that they could run 24/7. Some updated their websites and added a little bit more and maybe mobile accessibility if they didn't, but we didn't skip a beat. Year over year, rentals and occupancy is up. Self-storage is, if you look at any of the charts for anybody out there right now, industrial and self-storage, industrial because retail is dying even quicker, and Amazon is building warehouses, and all the other industries that benefit from Amazon's increase in business are building industrial buildings, and so industrial's done extremely well, but self-storage is at the top right now. And I looked at a report the other day in terms of all the REITs from 2020, the real estate investment trusts, and storage and industrial are the only two sectors of the economy in real estate that ended up in positive numbers for last year. Yeah. Wow. Everything else was in the negative. So we don't celebrate pandemics and we don't celebrate recessions, but with those traumas and transitions and downsizings, we benefit from that when people have to put their stuff in storage until they weather whatever storm it is they're going through.
Got it. Understood. Finally, you started off with value add, and that's something that us as operators, my listeners, myself, we're always talking about how to value add. And I know how to take a C-class asset and make it a C+ or even a B. And I know how to renovate units to do that. But tell me some of the strategies that you use to value add a storage complex.
Yeah. So distressed real estate is distressed real estate, as you know, Justin. These things when you drive by it, somebody is taking their hands off the wheel and it just looks bad, first of all. Yep. Now, again, somebody isn't living there and their stuff's going to go there, but, if you can't even find an attractive, picture that you can take anywhere at your facility to put on your website, then you're not going to rent out compared to your competition. So it does start from the curb. Then it does start from presence, being found. We're a commodity, and if it's a mom and pop that own this facility and they never bothered to even put it on a website, they're still advertising in the yellow pages, drive-by traffic and word of mouth is not going to cut it. And so, it is adding web presence and then making sure that you are paying for, to get traffic, to get eyeballs on your site, being able to be mobile friendly. It has to be a mobile friendly website. You have to have accessibility to allow them to rent. when somebody does come onto the site, hopefully accessibility by way of a kiosk where they can walk into a lobby and rent a unit there as well. And if you have a live person behind the counter, then that office needs to look sparkling. It needs to look bright. It needs to look modern. That person behind the counter needs to have a logoed shirt on, a golf shirt or otherwise, and not a dirty wife beater tank top and smoking a cigarette and a hat on and a nasty dirty office. And they have to be educated. They have to know the product. They have to know the industry, and they have to know how to do the paperwork and provide a nice, friendly, professional experience for that person coming in, because they can go down the road. They can go somewhere else, and you have to train them to be salespeople. And you have to give them incentives in order to lease units up. So it is really all about the product and that it presents well, that it can be found when it's found, it presents well, and then all along the way, ease of use, make it super easy for somebody to be able to rent a unit and have a professional experience. Now on top of that, then it's rent management, revenue management, just driving the NOI, which is driving expenses down, driving revenue up. So long as it doesn't drive your occupancy down as well, and sending people to your competition, and just be militant about the expenses. So it's
how can you reduce expenses? I imagine they have to be fairly fixed, right?
They are. I mean, they are. Our expenses are pretty low to begin with. So, on the front end, separating the business from the real estate, so that we can appeal property taxes, or at least not have an increase. It's two separate purchase agreements. So going into it is the first thing right out of the gate, fighting against property taxes, and then putting technology in to reduce, or in some cases, eliminate what was a full-time salary at $40,000 a year, and reduce that by half or completely if it's an unmanned facility. I mean, you're right. There's not much in terms of utilities, but we put LED lights all over the place, and get rid of anything else that's out there. If they're leasing pole lights from the electric company, get rid of those. Put on LED wall packs. We handle those. Getting rid of dumpsters. We don't provide a dumpster. If they brought their trash, take it with them when they leave. We don't need to be paying for those. Economies of scale from an insurance standpoint, being smart about that and reducing that. Absolutely giving your manager the ability to earn commissions on locks, boxes, moving supplies, rental insurance. Some of these folks, they don't have any of these programs. They just rent a unit and that's it. And we've identified over 40 plus profit centers that you can add to a facility, from truck rentals to retail of locks, boxes, moving supplies, to eBay services, to pack and ship, to receiving. We have pharmaceutical reps that receive in our multi-story temperature controlled facilities that receive samples and things, and so they pay our manager to receive those from UPS, FedEx, any of the other shipping companies. Dock doors in the back to be able to accommodate some of these larger business customers and clients. I mean, there's a number of ways that you can just accommodate and expand your services and be able to drive that at every point of sale. So it's not a magic formula. It's just making sure that what's available to me. Can I sell medical records storage and shredding services at this site? Does it make sense in this market? Wine storage for furs, art, other collectibles. In an area that we have sectioned off that is temperature controlled to 55 degrees and humidity controlled, so that the corks don't get dried out in their wine, and their furs don't get destroyed, and their art doesn't fade away or whatever. Just looking for any opportunity that we can to differentiate ourselves and add on another profit stream.
Got it. Wow. Great. I'm learning so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
My pleasure. We like the biz.
Yeah, no, I love it. And you got my gears turning a bit on a number of different ways, but let's transition here to, you mentioned a program that you're offering, so I definitely want to give you a chance to let our audience know how to find out about you and connect with you about that.
Yep. So go to selfstorageinvesting.com. Simple enough. Selfstorageinvesting.com.
What a domain.
And there's a number of
beautiful.
What's that?
I said, what a domain. That's perfect.
Wow. We had to pay a little bit for that one back.
I imagine you did. Yeah. Yeah.
It does. It is. So that's a lot of free resources to be able to pull down to show you, how to get started. Where do you go to begin market and what to look for. Kind of some basic underwriting, so that you can understand exactly what you're looking at and looking for. Other tips and strategies, and as well as all the resources that we have that are on the paid side as well. Our home study system, which starts with a business plan and walks you through how to set up your business. Our software for underwriting and understanding the numbers behind it, the art and the science to underwriting a self-storage facility. And then if you want to take it a step further and immerse yourself in the business, there's the events page. And so take a look at that. Our live events that are coming up. We've got some in Orlando, Indianapolis. We're heading out to Arizona. So if you want to immerse yourself in the business and learn from our team, then get yourself out to one of our live events.
Wow. All of Scott's links, everything that he just mentioned will be up on our website, truemultifamily.show, bio, all that great stuff. Scott, I have to thank you for coming on the show. Before we go, we always end with our true multifamily tip. I'm going to change it for self-storage. And so I come to you, Scott, and I say, hey, Scott, multifamily is great, but I want to get into self-storage investing. What is your true multifamily tip for that?
Yeah. So, as I said, that the biggest mistake that I made when I made that jump into commercial real estate was that I didn't get some help. Whether it even being a consultant, let alone a mentor or a coach. Somebody to kind of walk you through that. Just to take a look over your shoulder and take a look at your underwriting and look at the deal that you're about to get into. Make sure that you have an attorney looking over your documents, but. We teach people how to build teams, and you really do have to have a team. It doesn't mean you have to hire a whole bunch of folks, but you need to have a number of advisors assisting you on that very first project. And then after that, Justin, it's which I know you're used to saying, and I'll just repeat it: is guys, you got to go out and do it. I mean, right now. There is no better time. Money is so cheap. We have mom and pop, investors that are getting a little nervous about the coming recession and still what's going on with COVID and what have you. And they're selling their apartment complexes. They're selling self-storage. They don't want to go through another one again. And I see, I don't know about you, Justin, but I see fewer and fewer people that are willing to do the heavy lifting and really just go out and pound the streets, make those connections with the brokers in commercial, whether it be a multifamily or self-storage, and send the direct mailers out to the owners of these properties, and then following up and making the phone calls and pulling on doors and going in and introducing yourself. I think there's no better time, and we have an incredible opportunity in this window right now where money is cheap. There are a lot of folks that are looking to sell, and there's the oncoming recession is a huge demand for storage. So just go out and do it, make it happen. Right now is a time to execute. Get your education, get the folks behind you, but it's time to step up and take a swing at the plate.
Wow, love it! Such great advice, Scott Meyers. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you.
Justin.
Guys, if you missed it, hit up truemultifamily.show for Scott's episode with all of his links. Great episode, Scott. Thank you again. See you soon.
My pleasure, Justin. Good to catch up. Take care.
Thanks for listening to another episode. Check out our website at truemultifamily.show. And if you have an amazing story to tell, share it on our Facebook community, and you might just be the next guest on the show. We're also on all other social networks. Just search True Multifamily.